Hey, comrades. Hope everyone's doing great. We're here picking up volume 30 of the Fairy Tale Manga series, where the defeat of Hades has just occurred from our previous videos. And everyone's selling around, being happy, standing around, being happy. When all of a sudden Carla and Happy come running into the room, followed by all of Hades' men. Panther Lily looks all tired and stuff, and all our friends, Urza, Wendy, Gray, Lucy, and Natsu are like, oh fuck, we're out of magic. And then ta-da, the crew's here. Freed, Fairy Chick, Bickman, Makarov, the whole crew. Elfman, Mary Jane, Lysiana, Gajil, everybody. And it's like, hooray! And then all these guys, like, they see them, they start freaking out. They see Hades is knocked the fuck out. And they just like, and Makarov's like, get the fuck out of here. And they all run. And then Fairy Tale's all hugging and clapping. And Laxus and Makarov make up. And they have a big talk, and the Lexus is like, whatever, I'm not coming back to the guild. And then the Raijin crew like jumps him and is like, yay. And then Gajil and Natsu like, yell at each other as they do. At that point, Makarov walks up to Hades, and Hades is like, finish me. And him and Makarov go back and forth about how Hades went to find the magic, the true magic, and then he realized that darkness is where magic comes from, and that's when he turned his heart to the one magic, which is the darkness. And then Makarov talks about how magic is not defined by darkness or light, that it's defined by whoever is using it, that it doesn't have to be light or dark or red or blue or anything, and that Fairy Tale lives on freedom, and that Hades is actually the one who taught him that, and he's not going to do anything about it. Everyone heads back to the camp so they can get healed up by Wendy and whatnot. And Natsu's like, pass the fuck out from everything. And Lysiana gives him like a cute little like twin tails, which is adorable. Kajil's super happy that Panther Lily is such a badass, and everyone's just having a good time. Eventually Juvia just like rolls up and she's like, hello, please forgive me, I let Seraph get away. And then she turns her butt to Gray and is like, please punish me. And he's like, what? I'm not gonna do that. And then Gildart and Laxus kind of go back and forth. Lucy completely forgives Kana for going away, and then they laugh and have a good time. Meanwhile, Grandma Hart is all taking off. It's pretty much just like Perv Guy, Glasses Guy, and Hades is dressed like a mummy because he's all bandaged up and beat up. And they're talking about how they were so close to getting Zareth and whatnot, and then all of a sudden Zareth just like wanders onto the ship, and he's like, the world ends now, and Hades is like, fuck. So they all bow to him, and he talks about the keys, and like Hades went and found all the keys, but the keys are just some old bullshit and whatnot, that he was never asleep, that he's always been alive, and Hades talks about his eyes, and they all think about like everything that occurred and everything, and Zareth's like, his magic is based on, God, some crazy shit. That the value of life, let's see, is bigger. His body was cursed. The more precious I feel human life is, the more souls it steals. So he has to separate himself from other people, because if he feels like human life is valuable, then the curse is that it starts killing everybody around him. And then he talks about Acnologia again. And so then he summons Acnologia, and then he casts like this repent spell on these guys, which seems to just like wrecks their shop. It's a badass scene. We then head over to Urtir and what's her name, Mouttree, and they're riding on a boat. Oh, Marudi. And Urtir's talking about like dolphins and stuff, and the Marudi asks about the village and about what the crow boy, Jan Crow, whatever his name was. And she admits that it's true, and that what she wanted to do was that she wanted to go back in time and like relive the whole thing and not destroy her village and all that stuff. And then she asks to be forgiven. Or no, she says she knows she can't be forgiven, and then she doesn't want Marudi to like bloody her hands. So then Urtir like stabs herself and falls off the boat. And then Marudi is like super like what the fuck? And so Urtir's like, I love you. And then Marudi like jumps in, like pulls her out, and then casts a sense link so that Urtir doesn't die, because Marudi's like sharing her pain. And then they each talk about how they love each other because they're like mother and daughter. And then we see the Hades airship just like get completely destroyed by Zareth. And then he calls him impotent scum. And then he looks up in the air and he's like, fuck, Acnologia, you've come. Meanwhile, back at the Fairy Tale tent, we find out that the S qualification test has been canceled, which pisses off Gajil, Natsu, Elfman, Gray. Remember, Gajil was helping Livy. What's her name? But he wasn't even like Levy. Yeah, Levy. He wasn't even a member of like the group. And then they talk about how they had to because everything got fucked up, and like one of the members was like a member of the council who was being sneaky and all this stuff. And the Natsu's like, everyone kind of like, oh, I guess I'm done. I really wanted to be it, but I guess I can't do it. And then Natsu's like, I guess I win by default. And then Makarov's like, all right, let's do the final test. If you can beat me, then you can become S-class. And then Makarov just like bashes the shit out of him, and Natsu's like, I lose. Laxus then is like messing around with Lysiana, being like, wow, you're real. We just get a bunch of shots of this kind of stuff going, like everyone kind of being cute and funny and talking about stuff. And Wendy wants to go meet Laxus because he's another dragon slayer, right? And she wasn't around when he was around. And then we get the best part of Fairy Tail, which is Lucy in a bath. Yes, so completely naked, covering her tits. Oh my gosh, so good. And then her and Kara just talking about how Kana took off, and Lucy's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't worry about it. And then we get like a back shot of Lucy and then more breasts, and it's all fucking fantastic. But Lucy, of course, forgives her and convinces her that she needs to go tell Gildart that she is his daughter. They then go find Natsu being taught how to fish by Gildart, who's trying to make him a man by teaching him that fishing is like a very manly thing to do. And then when the ladies show up, he's like, hold up, we're doing manly stuff over here. And Lucy's like, no, Kana's got something she's got to tell you that's really important. And then Lucy grabs her boyfriend, Natsu, drags him off with Happy. And he's like, what's up? And then she tells him, she finally reveals, like, I've been searching my father, and then you're my father. And then Gildart goes in this hilarious, like, spree where he names, like, 45 different women that that he's had sex with. And then she gets super mad and starts to storm off. And he's like, no, you're Cornelia's girl, I'm sure of it. Like, Cornelia was his actual wife, and he never remarried ever again. And somehow, like, she died while he was away, but somehow she had a daughter and he wasn't aware because he was always working, and that was 18 years ago. Because remember, these chicks are like 18, 17 years old, which is fucking awesome. And he asked for forgiveness, and they have like this very cute like thing together. And then he's like crying and thinking about all the moments that he lost, and he's like, no, I will hold you forever and give me permission to love you. And it's like super cute. And then Lucy's like crying, and she's thinking about her own father. And then we get like a lot of the time we get like kind of over talk, and it's Lucy writing in her journal. So she talks about how everyone was basking in the warm sunlight on Sirius Island when suddenly doom arrived, which is Acnologia. And then Gildart all of a sudden like feels it, and then everyone's like, oh, what's that voice? I feel terrible. Like, what's this thundering? And they look up and see the dragon, and they're like, holy shit, dragons are still alive. And then Makarov's like, Acnologia, everyone get the fuck out of here right now. And Acnologia like lands, and the Makarov turns into like and roars. And then Makarov turns. Let's see, does that happen right away? Oh, Gildart at first is like, everyone run. And then it starts like bouncing around, and they're all screaming and stuff, and then trying to run away from its attacks. And then Zareth, I think, is talking to himself. I mean, he's kind of, there's like parts of Grimoire Heart are like below him. He's on top of the ship while they're flying away. And he talks about Acnologia. He doesn't like the way humans look at bugs, the way Acnologia views humans. Like, he's not going to use his full power against them because why would he? They're just bugs or whatever. And then he says goodbye because he thinks this is the end of an age, and Natsu's going to be dead. And this is where Makarov transforms into like his giant form and starts holding off Acnologia and fighting him. And he's not going to win, but he tells everybody like, get the fuck out of there right now to obey his commands. And then Laxus is like, let's go. And so they all start running away, and we get like shots of them all looking back. And he's like, carry on, Fairy Tail into the future. And everyone's looking super sad and upset. And Makarov gets like knocked down, and Acnologia is about to like fucking get him for good. When Natsu runs back, starts climbing up Acnologia and like fighting him, and then everyone's there, and everyone's like fighting him, doing their own attacks, and Makarov's crying, and his Laxus gives him like a look and is like, and then we see Mavis. Mavis is the first guild master of Fairy Tail, and she's like dead, right? So she's like a ghost, but her ghost is like standing around while they're all trying to fight for their best. And then Acnologia like flies up into the heavens to cast like some super attack, and then Urza calls everybody to like gather in a circle and concentrate on like defensive magic. And so they all do, and we get some nice shots like Makarov holding hands with Laxus, and they're like, we will defend and we will live and fight for Fairy Tail. And then Acnologia uses some like giant burst magic, and we see like everybody like fade off, and then we see the island just like completely disappear, and we get shots of like the council members on their ship, and Zareth and Marudi and Ortir just like staring at the island as it's like completely disappears. And then Zareth's like, it's all over, isn't it? And then we get the journal entry. It says, on December 16th in the year 784, Sirius Island was annihilated by Acnologia, and then he disappeared, Acnologia. And then 6 months went by and people were searching for survivors and they couldn't find any. And then 7 years went by. What the fuck? It's so good. And then we see Romeo. Romeo, if you don't remember, is, I think his name's Gustav or something like that. Well, it'll come up here in a minute. But Romeo, who was like a tiny little boy, he's like a teenager now because it's been 7 years. And then we see the gun troop, like the hot cowboy girl and her like poncho husband now. Macau, that's his name. Yeah, Macau is Romeo's father. And now Romeo's a member of Fairy Tale Guild. And so Bisca and I can't remember the other guy's name. Anyway, so we go to the guild, and the guild is totally different. It's like in this tiny beat up place, like off the trail. We see Macau just like drinking, and we get like a recap of like it's been 7 years. So all the people that didn't go, like Lockie and Warren and Nab and all these people, like you probably don't know any other names because they're like been background characters for the most part. But like Levy's crew, like one of them got super fat, and then the fat guy who like drew pictures is like super skinny now. So it's kind of funny. And then these guys show up, and they're from Twilight Ogre, and they call Fairy Tale weak ass, and we find out that they like bailed out Fairy Tale at some point and then moved him to, or they like Fairy Tale didn't make enough money to maintain their spot, so they had to move out to this place, and they couldn't afford the mortgage. So like these guys lent them some money, and they want money. But Fairy Tale can't get any jobs because there's only like 6 of them now. There's really not that many members, and so there's like a back and forth. Macau gets kind of beat up by this guy who's like treating him like shit because Macau is now the 4th master of the Fairy Tale Guild. And these guys just like treat them like total garbage, and they mess up the place and say they got like a week or whatever to like pay them back. And then everyone gets sad because the drawing guy, God, I fucking forgot his name. His sketchbook falls out, and we see all the people that have been gone for like 7 years. So everybody's like super sad eponymous about that. And so they talk a little bit about that, about what's been going on. And then let's see, yep. They just talk about that. Macau's sorry for being like a bad master. And they're like, no, you're doing the best that you can. And then Romeo, he feels bad because he disappointed Romeo. And then Blue Pegasus shows up. So Blue Pegasus with their new with the ship Christina, which is rebuilt. It's Ichiya with his like beautiful like perfume talk. And then the beautiful men, Ren, Eve, and Hibiki. They all pop down and of course hit on Lackey immediately. And then they talk about Sirius Island still exists. They found it. They've been searching. What did they search? Like the Etherscape or whatever, but the Atheranos. And so then they found it. So then a lot of the guild hops on a ship with them and heads out to find this, or they head out to where the Blue Pegasus Guild said that the ship was, and there they see this girl standing on the sea's surface, and it's Mavis. And then all of a sudden the island of Sirius just like pops out of the water, and then the girl like leads them inwards into the island where they find Natsu like half buried in the ground, and they're like, what the fuck? Meanwhile, back at the guild, Romeo's like studying, and he's still not talking to his dad, Macau. And then the douchebags come back, and they're like, all right, we were gonna give you a week, but now you're gonna come right now. And then the dad, Macau, like is like, oh no, give us more time, whatever. And Romeo's like, that's it, I've had enough, I'm gonna fight these guys. And so he goes to cast like his fire magic, and the guy just like blows it out. And then all of a sudden, the guy who's like being the boss of this like little troop that's being total assholes gets his ass kicked and flies into the wall. And then all of them get like the asses handed to him. And we see it's Natsu and the whole crew, and they're home, and like we returned, we're back, and it's like fucking yeah, badass. And then Macau's like, well, what the fuck? And everyone's so happy, and they're like hugging. Like Levy's crew is giving her a hug, and everyone's like cheering and stuff. And then we find out that the group that went over there, they found Natsu and dug him up, and then Mavis like revealed everyone else and revealed their names. Mavis Vermilion, the first headmaster of the Fairy Tale Guild. And then we see everybody else, and they're all fine, and everyone's like super happy and cheering and hugging. And we find out that this is the 3rd fairy magic called Fairy Sphere, which is an ultimate defensive power. And then Mavis like congratulates Makarov for being so successful as the 3rd master. And so then Natsu's like, hey, Romeo, you look great. You're so grown up. And then Romeo starts crying, and Macau's crying and everything. And so then we spend the rest of this volume kind of, Fairy Tale is like a giant party, and everyone's cheering, and they're totally broke, and they live in this like tiny place. But everyone's trying to recover and find out this is where we find out Romeo's learning magic, and he's learning magic from the Phantom Lord guy who did magic that Natsu fought, and like different kinds of magic and all that stuff. And Natsu talks about eating different kinds of magic and how fun it was. And Happy's like, what, you hated that shit? And then Macau's like, all right, master, well, you're back and you're in charge again. He's like, nope, you're the 4th master, you're in charge. And he's like, what? And this is where you find out that Bisca and the guy, I can't remember his name is, that they're married now and they have a kid. And Urza's like, what the fuck? And then the drawing guy drew a picture of like Wendy as she would be in like 7 years from when she is now, as like a 14-year-old, and she still has like super small breasts, and she gets super concerned about that. And they see a picture of like the cat people, and they look like completely ridiculous. And Curly's like, what the fuck is this? And then Lamia scale shows up, which is Gray's old buddy, what's his name? Leon, and Sherry, right? And Toby and Yuka and like all those guys from when they and what's his name, Jura, from back when like Gray's arc with the whole island thing and whatnot, when they were trying to resurrect that monster. And then Juvia finally meets a lot of these guys, and Leon is like madly in love with Juvia like immediately. And then she has like this whole crazy like Lysiana and Lucy and Ultir and Juvia are all in love with Gray. And Cherry's in love with Leon, who's in love with Juvia, and Natsu's in love with Lysiana, and it's like a whole like shipping chart. and Lucy's like, what the fuck is she thinking about? And then yeah, we just get some more party shots and everything, and Lucy's just thinking about how they're in dire straits still because of like the request board and everything. And when she goes to go back to her home, the landlady is like, what the fuck, you owe me 7 years of rent. And she's like, no, I'm homeless. It's because it's like 6 million jewels or whatever. And then people talk about how the guild's in like complete financial ruin and everything. And then Lucy really thinks about Gildart and Kana and how maybe she should go visit her father because it's been 7 years, right? And they never had like a good relationship. But at the same time, like he's made a lot of amends in the more recent thing. And then we get a lot of like like moments where Biska tells Urza about Jalil, and then Jura tells Makarov about something, and then Gray asks Leon about Ultir and Marudi, and then Natsu finds something at his house, his old home, like which is all overgrown and shit. And then Lucy has gone to the merchant city of Akarifa, which is the trade guild Love and Lucky. And Natsu came along because apparently what he found was that his money's been stolen, and so him and Happy have absolutely no money, and there's no jobs, and so they're starving, so they just came along with Lucy. And Lucy shows up and asks about her father, and then she gets the bad information that dun dun dun, he just passed away, like very recently. And so they go to check out the grave, and Lucy's like sad, and Natsu and Happy are just kind of like walking with her and not saying anything. And then they hear these like crazy bitches like complaining about their dads, and Natsu like screams at them, and then Lucy's like, you can stop. Like, it's not that I'm not sad, it's just that, it's a thing. It's like for so long they were like not good friends, and then like he was kind of being better, and that just she feels alone, doesn't feel like crying or anything like that, but she doesn't harbor any negative feelings or anything. We then switch over to Twilight Ogre, and we meet the Master Bond Booster, who's talking to Makarov about everything that he owes and how they're going to pay for it, and they're going to pay for it right now. And then Makarov talks about how his guys like messed up his guild and fought his guys, and how they're going to get revenge. And then Urza and Mara Jane, who are there, like transform into like their demon forms, and then there's a couple guys like Macau is just like standing outside the guild, and you hear just like crashing and breaking and everything. And then they see Natsu, and Natsu just like looks totally like checked out. Same thing with Happy. They're like, are you guys okay? We then see Lucy just kind of being sad, sitting like out in the middle of Acnologia, when the landlady shows up and just grabs her and drags her back and like tosses her in her room. And she's like, holy shit, my room's clean. And Lady's like, yep, I cleaned it every week. And some of your outfits I stole. She's currently wearing one of her like outfits, and the landlady's like a old woman with like big tits and like she's short and fat. Anyway, and then she like shows her a table where her father sent her a present like every year for the 7 years for her birthday, and she's like sad about that. And then there's like one more letter that arrived, and it talks about how he's wished he could have done more, and that he's finally finding some fulfillment just like working in this guild and making deals, and he's really enjoying his time, but he misses her and Layla, who's his ex-wife, or not his ex-wife, his dead wife, all the time. And he hopes that someday they can meet again. And then she starts crying, especially because he writes that he'll love her forever no matter what, and she's like, oh, I love you too, and she's crying and whatnot. And then the landlady like watches her for a little bit as she's just crying by herself, and heads out and finds Natsu and Happy, who are like stunned that she's wearing Lucy's outfit from like the very beginning of the manga. And she's like, hey, just leave him alone for now. I'm like, but we have a job. And then she mentions that Lucy's okay, that like in that letter included 7 years of rent, so that Lucy's like caught up and everything. You know, it was the last gift from her father before he died. And they're like, oh, we got to go. And they like yell at Lucy, like, hey, we're going to go take a job. We'll come back as soon as we get done with it. And we'll bring you some food and, you know, take care of yourself. And then she thinks like, you know, it's like 7 years is lost is a long time. But we decided to keep living. And she's like, hey, wait up. I'm coming too. And that wraps up volume 30, which was fucking excellent. Excellent. And this is like kind of the mid series, because I think there's like 64 volumes total. But yeah, we'll pick up with 31 in a couple weeks. And so go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.